Ever since I saw Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse, I've been dying to re-rank all the Spider-Man movies, so let's do it. And if you're worried about spoilers for Across the Spiderverse, don't worry, there's not going to be any. Alright, now let's get into it. In absolute dead last, I'm going with Morbius for pretty obvious reasons. Not only was it an absolutely terrible movie, but it was barely connected to Spider-Man at all. Like, if it wasn't for that terrible post-credit scene, it would have, like, no connections to Spider-Man at all. It's dog shit, and we're moving on. Next up, I'm going with Venom II. This was another kind of a train wreck of a movie, but this one I actually had higher hopes for because the first one was actually kind of good. And honestly, at the end of the day, I feel like this movie did have potential to be good, but they messed up just a couple of things. For me personally, I just think this movie should have been a little bit longer so we have more time to actually care about the characters, and it should have been rated a hard R. Like, this is about a serial killing, like, psychopath covered in a symbiote. Like, dude's going around biting people in half. This should have been rated R. Immediately after that, I'm gonna put Spider-Man III with Tobey Maguire. I mean, come on, if we're all being completely honest with ourselves, like, the only reason that Tobey Maguire's movies were as good as they were back then was because they didn't have competition. Like, straight up, if Tobey Maguire wasn't the first dude to get Spider-Man movies, you wouldn't like him nearly as much. Go back and watch them without, your nostalgic glasses on, and tell me that these movies aren't either boring or just an absolute train wreck. For me personally, I actually thought Spider-Man was mid as fuck until Andrew Garfield's first movie came out, and then I actually liked the character. But if we're talking about this movie specifically, I would say the one redeeming quality is this suit. Like, that Venom suit was sick. Venom himself was not, but this suit was. While we're on the topic of Venom, that brings me to the next one in line, Venom. This movie was actually pretty cool. Like, the brutality, the comedy, the pacing, the story of it was all pretty cool. Everything else on this list was way better, but this one was pretty cool. At number 9, I'm going with The Amazing Spider-Man II. Now, even though this movie looks an insane amount better than Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire, it kind of suffers the same fate. The actual story itself was not strong enough to support everything that was going on. We got a couple of villains that would be cool if they had more time to shine, but unfortunately they wasted too much screen time on one or the other. Like, if they would have just picked one, this movie would have been way better. Next up at number 8, I'm going with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1. Now, if I'm being completely honest, this would have been much lower on the list if this wasn't like the original. I was trying to show some level of respect here. But at the end of the day, like, Tobey Maguire I don't like him. I don't like him for some weird reason. I know everybody else does, but I just don't like him. Willem Dafoe, on the other hand, very much carried this movie. But then slightly above that, I'm going to put Spider-Man 2, also with Tobey Maguire. This is easily the best movie in the Tobey Maguire trilogy, and I think most people would agree with me on that. But as we move forward, I think a lot of people are going to disagree, because next up I'm going with Spider-Man Far From Home. Easily one of the most overhated Spider-Man movies ever made. Tom's suit, sick. Mysterio's suit, sick. The first time we get to see the MCU's Spider-Sense, sick as fuck. Dude, honestly, one of the coolest scenes of the whole MCU, period. People act like this is the worst display of Peter Parker's character out of any Spider-Man movie. Like, what? Are we watching the same thing? This whole movie was about showing Peter Parker that, like, you gotta kind of step up. You can't just pass off your problems to other people. Like, you gotta step up and take care of shit. And what's really cool is, like, come to that end fight, you can actually see him take inspiration from the people that he looks up to. Like, this movie is fucking awesome, man. What are you talking about? Alright, now I'm starting my top 5 with The Amazing Spider-Man. Personally, I would say Tom's my favorite Peter Parker, but Andrew is a very, very close second. I think they did his character perfectly in here. He was funny as hell. He actually moved around like a spider. Like, his climbing is insane. His suit is actually one of the coolest suits ever made. It's the hexagonal, like, texture right here for me. Next up at number 4, I'm going with Spider-Man Homecoming. Most people's complaint about this movie is that, oh, he's Iron Man Jr., he doesn't have any responsibility. This isn't a Spider-Man movie because he has no responsibility. Dog, I'm gonna need you to calm down, pump the brakes, just, like, chill, man. Honestly, if you think about it, Tobey and Andrew were both kind of whack to learn that with great power comes great responsibility in their first movie. How does that set them up for any sort of character development whatsoever? The Tom Holland trilogy has him going from like a little shit that does kind of whatever he wants. Then by the time we hit Far From Home, not only has he lost his mentor, but now he realizes that he's in way over his head. And by the end of that movie, he comes to the realization that maybe I should step up and be something bigger. And then we get into No Way Home, where he loses his aunt, and actually hears the fucking line, with great power comes great responsibility. Tom's Spider-Man has way more character development than Andrew or Tobey, and it's crazy to think otherwise. Then at number 3, I'm putting Spider-Man No Way Home. I honestly never thought that I would put this low on a Spider-Man movie ranking. This movie was sick. Like, you know how many movies get cameos for no reason? They're just kind of there just for a second? Well, these cameos actually served a purpose, and the story was awesome. The hype leading up to this movie was insane. Like, the theater experience was unlike anything I've ever experienced. But even though this movie is one of the best in the entire MCU, it's still not enough to beat Into the Spiderverse. This movie is awesome, and it's even better after seeing Across the Spiderverse. Obviously, the animation, the voice acting, the soundtrack is all insane. But aside from that, there was so many details in this movie that set us up for Across the Spiderverse that we didn't even know were details until Across the Spiderverse came out. Which brings me to the number 1 Spider-Man movie of all time, Across the Spiderverse. Not a single other movie on this list made me go back to other Spider-Man movies and look at them differently. This movie, on the other hand, had me rethinking every Spider-Man movie ever made. All the trauma that they all went through, did they have to go through all that to become who they were supposed to be? No. No, and Miles Morales is proof of that. I don't know, I can't really say a whole lot about this movie without spoilers, so let me just say this movie is insane. 12 out of 10, improves upon the last one in every way. Not only do I highly recommend you go see it in theaters, I highly recommend you go see it like 2 or 3 fucking times in theaters. It is absolutely worth every single penny. I don't even have a DVD or Blu-ray player, and I might buy this shit on Blu-ray just to fucking have it. And for those of you saying, oh, well, this is just a stupid movie because it's just a part 1, so was Infinity War. And at one point, Infinity War was a part 1 to Infinity War Part 2, until they changed it to Endgame. And besides, like, why are you complaining, dude? Like, that's what Marvel used to do so well. When you finished a Marvel movie, you were, like, violently excited for the next one. You could not wait. You were like, why the hell is the next movie a year and a half away? I'm so excited. Well, that's what this movie did for us. For the first time in a long time. But hey, this whole, like, 8-minute goddamn video is just my opinions. I also want to hear yours in the comments, so please let me see you in the comments. Do you agree with this ranking? And if you don't, let me know what you think. And as always, follow for more.